Well, you want to slide over this way?
Yeah, we're gonna slide you
No,
over there.
I'll be all right. I've got to leave. Yeah, I'll be right back. Maybe you ought to tell them who we are, Bob.
Yeah, I ain't. Who are we?
I'm not sure. I don't know
Okay,
who he is
that's Ronnie over there. This is RL here in the middle, and I'm Wild Bob sitting on the end. And this is the Wild Bob and Ronnie show for Tuesday, February the 4th, 2014, coming to you from from LaFollette, Tennessee, by way of the internet on UGTV.tv. Of course, if you're listening to us, you've already got that down pat, and we're just tickled to death to have you here today. And we hope you will stay with us, and maybe we might say something that will be of benefit to you. We've got RL here, who is our resident wizard, to straighten us out on anything that we might kind of go off on a tangent. Of course, he only has 5 minutes. That's all we allow him, is to talk about anything. So would you like to just fall under your 5 minutes, or is there anything you want to, or anybody you want to insult, or anything that you want to say about anything that's going on local, national, or international, or even
Extraterrestrial?
Well, you're right, yeah, out there in outer space.
Bob, you know that 5 minutes kind of sticks with a feller, and insulting people's what got that 5 minutes started.
Right.
Rubbing people's nose in something, and that's a subject I'd like to revisit with them people sometime in the future. See how their opinion still stands on it. I wish I could put together as many words as you do in a string. I run out of words before I can get that far along.
Well, look, you know, one of the string of words that gets me, and when I get to the end of it, I just don't know what to say, and that is the word that says incubator.
Incubator.
Now, I remember years ago when they first come out with the March of Dimes.
Okay.
That was designed to conquer polio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then after they got polio underhand, they started looking for other means for their
to spend the money on?
for them to stay in business,
okay.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly the way you have it with our incubator program. Did you know they are now the ones that are trying to bring about a farmer's market here by way of a new building?
A new building?
Oh yeah, I'm putting a new building.
Hadn't heard of that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it seems to me like that farmers have always been able to sell their goods out along the road. I mean, if you're going down the road and a farmer's got something to sell, chances are he'll just pull out the end of his.
Good.
Well, okay. Well, I can tell you a lot of things that don't look good, especially.
Those
but
things don't look good in this.
But the farmer, and all up different places wherever I travel and go, I see along the side of the road, especially in apple country and places like that, the farmers
you mean they do it other places?
Oh yeah, Virginia and places you see these things. They'll come right out to the end of their driveway or wherever or even have a little structure built there, and they just bring their product right out there. And
it wouldn't be in violation of code or zoning?
Well, probably not there. They probably haven't got that far, not advanced enough to have all these codes and stuff and whatever. Right. They're just in the process of surviving and living and making a decent living, maybe. Okay. That may be what they're into.
Right. What if they had one chicken and 2 goats, and the goats got out? What do you reckon they would do?
Put their hind ends in jail.
Well, you better be careful, Bob. They might have a public execution or something. You can't never tell.
Well, yeah, but it may be tar and feather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boys.
Looks good.
Looks good. Just help yourself out. Just tell us, they taste real good? Okay.
Did you catch those in the canal down there? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think they come from North Carolina. Everything else,
It might possibly.
everything else come from North Carolina.
I guarantee they had to come from somewhere other than here.
They come from over at Terry's.
Huh?
Over at Terry's.
Well, I noticed I didn't catch the governor's State of the State speech the other night, but I read in the paper here.
It was in good state.
It hasn't the greenest state in the land of the free. But anyhow, I see here that they're going, and I'm not sure that this is law yet. I'd say he's got to put this before the legislature before it becomes law. But it's called the some type of a promise. Can't hardly read it really right off. But anyhow, the gist of the thing is that anyone who has a high school diploma or graduates high school will be guaranteed 2-year free. And whenever they say
You
free,
mean college.
college, 2-year college, or a vocational school, or 2 years of further education for free.
Yeah,
And
it's free.
well, yeah, the way let me
Free
rephrase
to
that. Then.
them.
It's to be paid for out of the excess of
Reserve. The reserve.
yeah, reserve or whatever with the lottery system.
Right, yeah.
And it's going to leave them 100 and some million. And I think, I don't know, I believe, is this about 200 or 300 million this is going to cost?
I think
Anyhow,
so.
anyhow, beside the point I was working my way around to, a couple, 2 or 3 days ago, I read an article, and it was given the numbers on the lottery. And the lottery is taking in somewhere in the vicinity of $11 billion. That's with the B, of
year?
course. Yeah, in the
Is
state of
that
Tennessee.
net? Oh, right.
No, that's the gross that is taken in. And it's paid back somewhere in excess of between 5 and 6 billion or something like that. Back
That's
to
pretty
those
good percentage, ain't it?
back to those who have won. You follow what I'm saying? In
But
other words,
they're keeping 50 or more percent.
somewhere in the vicinity of about $5 billion. But after you take out the administration part of it and all the other stuff and whatever goes down to it, they end up with about, well, less than $2 billion.
Boy,
See?
they need to hire some cheaper help.
Well,
Can they get a few Mexicans to work on this thing?
my first saying of this thing, and I supported this lottery when it first was mentioned. I thought that was the greatest thing there
I do
was
too.
at
It's
first.
tax on stupidity. I don't
Well-
know any other way to tax that.
After I got to looking at it, though, I saw that it does not produce really goods and services. It produces a few jobs and a spin-off on it. That's the come on as far as the education is concerned. But if you take $11 billion in goods and service and multiply that times 9.25% sales tax, you could earmark that much sales tax, come out with as much money,
Yeah.
you see, or maybe even
Yeah.
more money.
Well, it's a cruel tax on poor people is what it is, and it produces less revenue than your sales tax net.
That is correct. If you were to take just the sales tax off of $11 billion, and not only that, see,
You'd have
that
10
the products that you're buying, or that the people are buying instead of buying lottery tickets, if they were buying milk, bread, whatever else, that's producing jobs also, because someone has to produce this. They have to grow it, produce it, or whatever else. And we would come out in the long run with more money and earmark that money specifically for the purpose of
You
education.
most certainly can, yeah. And believe it or what they fail to realize, they say, well, you know, it causes people to spend money to buy the lottery ticket. But I got news for you. Poor people gonna spend every penny they got anyhow. It don't make no difference whether they spend it on the lottery or whatever. They gonna spend it.
If it was, yeah, that I understand what you're saying. But anyhow, the thing that kind of struck me too, and this has always concerned me, is the Wounded Warriors program. The Wounded Warriors, first of all, I don't think a wounded warrior should have to ask for anything. In my opinion, the government should furnish them with anything they need. I don't care if it's a prosthesis or environment that's fitted to their needs or whatever, I don't think that they should have to ask or beg or whatever. But when I found out the other day that in the Wounded Warriors program, that the Wounded Warriors are only getting 10% of each dollar. By the time they get through with administration and all the other stuff, they're getting 10 cents on the dollar. And for some reason...
That's the way it is with most of your benevolent fundraisers.
Well, when it gets through the administration, it seems to me like the people that administering it, if they're spreading 90% of it around for advertisement or anything you want to name, or some Hollywood star to promote it or whatever, it just don't seem right to me for some reason. The first part is I don't think they should have to ask. I think they should be entitled to. They've paid,
Well, see, Obama does all this talking, or the current administration, or if you want to call it the current regime, whatever you want to call it. They do an awful lot of talking, complimenting our armed service personnel, and then they're stripping all the funds away from it. There's even a greater and greater backlog of medical needs on the part of veterans than ever before. I noticed, did you see where Obama compared the GI Bill to welfare?
I heard that reference made. That's I didn't hear him make it, but I've heard reference that he did indicate that that was some. He put it somehow into the same sentence or the same statement as welfare.
Well, what he did, he was justifying the fact of saying that he had not increased the welfare state when you consider the GI Bill, what's been spent under the GI Bill, that he has not increased the welfare state, because he's comparing the GI Bill to welfare.
I don't see how that's a major stretch.
Oh yeah, he's
to
stretched
compare that.
You'd be surprised how many low information voters would believe that, especially those who couldn't pass the physical or the mental or the educational exam to get in service and to become a part of that.
I'll tell you something else he said in the Bill O'Reilly interview. He said he wasn't as liberal as Richard Nixon, and I agree with him.
That he wasn't as what?
As liberal as Richard Nixon.
Maybe in some ways.
He said he made the EPA and OSHA and all that other stuff, and I agree.
Well, he didn't have...
Richard Nixon was not a Republican. He was a blamed FDR Democrat.
Oh, well, Richard Nixon, Watergate, it didn't hurt the country. But what Nixon did while he was in office did hurt the country.
That's what y'all been run off for.
Yeah. Well, you take... they impeached Richard Nixon for spying on 2 rooms in the Watergate apartment complex.
Is that right?
It was due here, I believe it's about an hour late.
They impeached him basically for covering up the spying on two rooms in the Watergate complex. But here, Obama has covered up spying on the world.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. Nixon had to go in and had to have the bugs planted and whatever to listen. Now, they don't have to do anything. The president could dial up the NSA and say, I'd like surveillance, or I'd like to know what's going on here and here and here.
What's going on down Dixie Concrete.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He said, we checked in down at Dixie Concrete, and them boys are down there making the hardest concrete known to man.
They do that, don't they?
Yeah,
Hey,
I know
fellas,
that.
That's 562, 5656.
They might get on the national watch list for that. They say, look, what if they put some of that in a Molotov cocktail? Just think how much damage it would do.
Hit somebody in the head with it, their head would never heal up.
The big news here local today has been the piece that fell out of the bridge. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Where was it over here?
That wasn't
between
Dixie
between Callahan and
Emory Road. Yeah,
I saw a picture of it.
I hadn't seen a picture. I kept trying to visualize what it was at, and they said it had hit an obstacle, and I didn't know of any.
Obstacle?
Well, that's right. You take something falls off on the road, it's a road hazard, and you get it out of the road. But what it was, the obstacle was the hole in the bridge. It's not what fell out of the bridge, it's the fact it left a hole in it.
Yeah,
left that hole in it. You know, that kind of makes me think sometimes of all the concrete that's been poured. It's like the Henley Street Bridge. The deck of that thing was replaced, of course, and the piers were poured at the same time the deck was. But yet the arches didn't have to be repoured, but they did do a little repair on them. And all the calcium and whatever that goes on that deck has got to go down through or into the river or wherever else. And once they got the deck off, then they had to have another bid on it. They found trouble with the arches. And there's a simple way to test concrete in place, and it's a thing called a Swiss hammer. And all it is, it's just a little device that it's got a spring in it, and you push it up, and you put it up there and pull the trigger on it, and you measure the rebound to test what the strength of the concrete is. It's not down to the digital type reading, but it will give you a pretty good estimation as to what you're working with. Anyhow, gentlemen, don't want to take up all your time. I've got an idea that just hit me, though.
Tell us.
I got one.
We're going to concrete business here.
Well,
give us all your secrets.
I got
that thing that's on television?
Mm-hmm.
That's been there. That's the pyramid in Egypt. It's been there over 3,000 years. It ain't up to code.
Of course not.
But you were going to tell us about Dixie Concrete. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, you mean stand past them, don't go
No, he didn't go look
down.
at it. He didn't look at it.
They ought to tear those things down. You know, those could fall, couldn't they?
It could.
Yeah, they sure could.
They'd be hard to tear down, too.
That's amazing. Anyhow, I got a little philosophical theory. What if we charged no taxes on anything? Quit taxing.
I'm for it.
Okay. Do you think it would work?
Yeah.
It would. And I'll tell you why. Right now, we're financing this country. Wars, you name it, everything under the sun. And we're only paying for probably half of it. The other half we're borrowing money for. Why don't we just borrow, we're printing money. Why don't we just print twice as much money and everybody quit
paying taxes?
Quit taxes and whatever else. Just
well, you couldn't divide, spread the wealth.
Well, I think that's a pretty good idea. You know, we've got just about that situation now anyhow.
Well,
when the feds have been pumping $70 to $80 billion a month
mm-hmm.
into the bond market, buying bonds with money that did not exist
mm-hmm.
prior. You know, it's like the minimum wage. I mean, why go to $10.10? Why don't you just go ahead and make the minimum wage $100 an hour?
Right. Well, if I understand the president correctly, his objective is to make the distance between, and we don't use the word class, we use poor. But if you go back, they say the high class or the upper class or the lower class. Now, if you got an upper class, you got a lower class and a middle class. My understanding as to what his objective is to make the difference between the lower class and the upper class smaller, to bring that number closer together to where there's less people, less distance. Let me put it that way. There's a shorter distance between the low class and the high class. All right? He's, by his executive order, signed a minimum wage for all federal employees, not the general public, but for all federal employees, a $10.10 minimum wage. That was 39 point something other, right at 40% increase in the minimum wage for federal employees. Okay, why not do the same thing on the upper end, and anyone that's earning above the 1010 take 40% off of their pay? And that would narrow this distance. You follow me? You raise the lower one 40%, you drop the upper one 40%, and baby, you're right down there to, these two numbers will almost come together.
Right, I mean,
Well, I have found that when it comes to robbing Peter to pay Paul, you can always
count on
count on the support of Paul.
Right, yeah. Well, you know, if you would do that, I could probably be a roommate for Warren Buffett.
Well, if the objective is to make the distance between the upper class and the lower class smaller, then if you're going to raise the lower class 40%, drop the upper class 40%, and you could almost make these two numbers come together.
Let me tell you something. If you took everybody in the United States and even them out with the same amount of money, equal, everybody, same amount of everything, and come back in 5 years, the ones that's ahead now would be ahead then, and the ones that ain't got nothing now wouldn't have anything then, 99.9% of the time.
Well, you take even
In the real
now,
world, you're right.
Even now, after 5 years of Obama, the distance between the poor and the rich has increased rather than decreased. So his policies have run completely contrary. The results are contrary from what he says he wanted to accomplish.
Well, the worst part about it is the poor's got poorer too.
Right, that's what I'm saying. The poor got poor and the rich got richer.
The $85 billion, now they've dropped that to $75 billion now.
They've done
And the plans are to drop it another $10 billion this month. And
What,
the way,
pumping?
yeah, the stimulus QE3.
Yeah.
The way I read an article.
Stock market's going down too.
No, really?
Yeah.
Well, the way I read this article is that their intention are to drop this stimulus by $10 billion per month till December.
Right.
And in December they'll have $15 billion and drop it $15 billion in December,
And eliminate.
which will eliminate QE3.
Right.
This will have an effect because the money that's being pumped into the bonds and stock market or onto the bond area, the people who are in the high positions of that deal in money, the higher whatever, have more access to this money to deal with it.
Exactly how much money do you reckon the lower half of this country get out of that money that's going into the stock market?
I would say it would have a whole lot to do with the same as what we call the charities. I'd say you'd have to stretch it. If the working class people are getting 10% benefit off of it, it would surprise me.
I wouldn't think they would.
I wouldn't think they would get that much benefit from it. There's whenever we
Because
call,
there's no incentive to create wealth of it, I'd say it's closer to zero.
I couldn't argue with that, but I would say that it is by no means any higher than the average of our nonprofits and whatever goes to charities.
If they had an incentive to use that stimulus money to create actual wealth, then it would trickle down. But they ain't creating no wealth. They're just trading.
No, you can't create a wealth out of thin air or money that has no value.
Unless you want to get a carbon tax exchange, and you can create wealth for Al Gore out of thin air.
Oh,
but
yeah,
that plot
he's done
failed.
that. By the way, folks, we still will put your name on one of my trees that I've been growing for about 50 years.
It's the one the goat's been skinning the bark off
Yeah,
of.
put your name on one of those trees down there for $500. I will put your name on a tree, and all of the oxygen it produces and all the carbon dioxide it absorbs will be a credit to you.
Me too. I got a tree or two I'd like to rent out.
Well, that's an interesting concept. If the carbon that is being produced and the carbon dioxide, who actually owns that carbon dioxide, and why do we have to pay someone else for something that we can't even prove is there? What I'm saying is, how does Al Gore profit off of something like carbon dioxide? And if he does profit off of it, why should people who own property that produces oxygen not be entitled to collect from the oxygen that they produce? And that's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, Obama outsmarted himself, or his government, or his operation did, when he contracted for the oil drillers to dispose of the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide through the method of fracking. Now, if you want to defeat global terrorism, the only thing we will basically have to do is open up the pipeline, start drilling on government land and producing a flood of petroleum products and byproducts, and put the Arabs back to where they have trouble feeding themselves, and you can't eat sand. And camel, I don't know how good camel tastes.
They say camel's good.
Probably.
But you don't eat your horse.
Camel over rice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that would scale them back so much that they would not be able to afford to sponsor all these uprisings and create an atmosphere for Sharia law to be imposed in various parts of the world. Mm-hmm. Let me ask something. In Mogadishu, which is in Somalia, they bring a shrub-like bush in by the truckloads every day, where the natives sit and chew on those twigs and on those bits like a dogwood toothbrush, and it makes them very lethargic. It slows their metabolism down. They don't realize that they're hungry, that they're nasty, and everything else. What's the name of that bush? You know what it is?
You're not talking about cocoa, are you? Coca?
No,
it's. And I know there's I've seen that. It's legal here. You just can't get it.
It's legal here?
Yeah, it's legal. You just can't get it.
You mean it's not illegal?
That's right.
Okay. Everything is legal in this country until it's declared illegal.
Well, if it ain't illegal, it's legal.
I believe it's the other way around. Everything in this country is illegal until they tell you it is illegal.
He's talking about theory. We're talking about in practice.
In practice. The plant that you're talking about, I heard this discussed, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't know what country it was in. It may have been in Vietnam. That where they chewed this plant, and it would do away with hunger pains.
You fellas
and
are talking
whatever,
about
but
two different things.
We may be.
What you're talking about and what I was thinking about is coca leaves. What he's talking about is something else. It's native to the Middle East, and I had a buddy from Yemen, and he chewed this stuff.
Okay.
It's a green.
Well, you know, now it's different from, say, marijuana.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay? Which marijuana also does somewhat calm you down, that sort of thing. The only thing, you know the reason they won't bring that into this country? That stuff from Mogadishu? It would put the Dorito people out of business.
Well, I was just thinking about that, the effect that would have as far as a counter to obesity.
What? That's it.
Is that what it is?
K-H-A-T.
K-H-A-T, okay. Is that if that was a silent
They
H?
call it
K-H-A-T.
Q-A.
No, K-H-A-T.
K-H-A-T.
Huh.
This is a Schedule II dangerous drug in Queensland. Okay.
Well, you know, to get all these people sit around and chew that stuff
Chewing
over there in
pot.
Mogadishu, and they don't riot, you know, they don't all tore up everything unless a Black Hawk helicopter comes along.
Okay.
What are they surveying out Demery?
What?
I don't know. I mean, they got these here. I saw 2 or 3 rigs. There's one out there across, well, there across from Elvis Malicoat's place. They had a thing set up there. It was one of them there GPS locators. It's sitting there, and then I saw some guy out there in the holler, and Sweet Spring Holler down under the hill, and they just set these things up and sit there and wait on something. I don't know. You know?
No, that's
They got this truck. It's painted like a zebra, white with black streaks, and it got no name on it. I saw them out there around across from Baker Ford Cemetery.
You know, they're trying to guide Officer Mongar back to the sheriff's
That
department.
could be.
Yeah, because he's bad to get lost every morning. He doesn't come in until about 10 o'clock, and then he has to leave at about 4 o'clock so he can find his way home, because he just got back from driving all the way out, what is that, 14 miles out there? For
14,
one
yeah.
way, 14 miles for lunch every day. You know, he come back in yesterday about 1:56 from lunch out there. I don't know what time he got back today. But that's driving a county vehicle, a $50-some thousand SUV, and he's making probably $40,000 or $50,000 a year and performing no useful service at all except rounding up goats.
Oh. Well, I believe a goat is something I've never owned, but I was intending to get some to do some work. You know, they do rent goats.
They what?
You can rent goats.
I got 2 on Rensselaer Spring.
Yeah, we got a
Well,
couple of renters.
That's 4.
I don't remember where I saw this at, but people that needed property cleared up,
Yep.
Yeah.
they would go in there, and I think my understanding was put up a temporary fence, like a electric fence,
Yeah.
and clear up an area.
Well,
you know.
they've contracted with the state to clear up kudzu areas with them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they go in there. They eat the kudzu. They're a little bit quicker than those little old stink bugs.
Yeah, the goat would not damage the land as far as the weight.
Right.
You take a big old 1,100-pound cow. If the ground's wet, they'll have an effect on it. They'll sure pack it down.
Right.
If it's steep enough, though, they will terrace it.
Right.
They'll make trails. If they're in there all the time, they'll
Yeah.
start a trail,
Yeah.
and most of them trails are not up and down the hill. They'll make
Right.
them around the hill.
Oh yeah. That's because they got 2 legs shorter than the other, and they walk on.
They'll walk around the side of the hill. But anyhow, this
Right.
if this product is not illegal, which I know they would make it illegal if there was a benefit for it, if it were to curb appetite, it would be an interesting thing.
Well, but see, that's somewhat
But
why the government is in favor of pot rather than alcohol or other drugs, because it gives everybody an euphoric feeling, and they can sit back and they don't really care whether or not the government is wasting their money or whatever it is. You know, it doesn't bother them one bit, because everything is just beautiful. Like the song, everything is beautiful.
Until we come up with a way that politicians are held accountable for producing something of benefit, we're not going to get out of the situation we're in.
Therefore, we're never going to get out of the situation.
That's
we're in.
right. All we have to do is print money to get us out of a situation. Path of least resistance is what we're going to do.
Well, I'd like to
Sure.
point out that we're sitting here in front of a Mr. Heater powered by propane from Digger Wilson's place, and it's getting right warm in here.
I'm telling you, you know, you needed some of that medium grade propane.
I know I still got that cold weather stuff.
Yeah, that's what you got in there, yeah.
562-5444 if you need some of that cold weather stuff.
Right down there in Sawmill Holler where the road splits. Go right on in there. And he was down there working when I come along a while ago.
I got a tank I need to get filled up. I need to also thank Bob for giving me a lid to go on my tank. He don't even know he gave it to me.
You don't know it, huh?
Give you
Not
what?
yet.
Lid to go on my propane tank.
Oh, have you got it yet?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good.
You mean you screw a lid on and make them safe when you transport them?
Well, they say you need one.
I
That's
told
a
you
good
I had
idea.
one, you know. Now
Your
I
buddy
don't.
up there found me one, brought it down here. I had one something wet with it. Maybe it.
Did you check?
I didn't know what the other looked like.
There's been I believe the president put a hold on the pipeline. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Keystone.
Keystone Pipeline.
Not be confused with Keystone Cops.
Okay. If there's an objection to this pipeline, is there an objection to the ones that we already have in use?
Well, the people that live beside them railroad tracks that's carrying it here by trains got an objection to not having a pipeline.
The main objection is coming from the environmentalist group that feels like it will aid to the use of fossilized fuel.
Oh, in other words, they don't object to the pipeline, they're objecting to the product that it
If
carries.
it was carrying Kool-Aid or something like that, they wouldn't care one bit about that.
Yeah, they would, unless it was environmentally friendly Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, this year environmental outfit is just a cover for socialism, communism.
Well, isn't that where they basically started, was when the Soviet Union disintegrated, that all those people had to go somewhere, and most of them flocked to the American environmental movement.
Yes, sir. A lot of them are headquartered in Chicago, too.
I know that, yeah.
The forms of government. Did you hear that UT is they're making preparations for what's labeled as Sex Week?
Again?
You know what they had last month,
Yeah.
last year?
Yeah.
Well, it's coming up again this year, and I caught a little whiff of things that the keynote main speaker is some lady who is represents the Communist Party or something along
she's
those
going to
lines.
speak down at UT.
Yeah, and she's going to be paid to speak.
No.
Pardon?
I said, oh.
Yeah, and this has to do, the question that was brought up before when this thing came to light last year was the fact that the funds that were being used to sponsor this, and it become before the legislature or something, and there was a discussion of it, and there was $11,000 that were going to be spent for it, and somehow the state pulled that money or would not allow them to use either the school's money or whatever, and they raised about $10,000 from donations to go ahead and have the event. And I know we're on TV, so I shouldn't probably use some of the contest or whatever they're having, but
We're legal.
we're having they're going to have what's called the golden condom
Oh, boy.
scavenger hunt. And I thought it was kind of odd. The guy that's represents this in the I can't think of his title, but he's over some kind of legislative or something. His name is David Golden. So I wondered,
what?
Golden.
Okay.
So I don't know whether
That's his or somebody
that's what I
else's.
don't know, whether they're looking for property that belongs to him or what. I thought it was kind of a coincidence that his name was Golden and part of their scavenger hunt was the same.
And you know what? That's something else. My daughter was over there. She was involved in the marketing. They had this project. It was a nationwide competition to come up with an environmentally friendly living thing. And her part of the job was to come up with some trademark, logo, promotional stuff for it. they built this little old, all it amounted to was a travel trailer. But they got out and got, I mean, they didn't use any of their money. They got solicited donations to finance this thing, and they built this here environmentally sustainable trailer. In other words, you could drive it up and live in it. You could open the curtains and be warm by the sun, and close the curtains and be cool, and mostly just a feel-good kind of thing. It was about 10 foot wide and 25 foot long. Would you like to guess how much it cost?
Well, I see some. There's a whole lot's being left out of this thing. Now I can see where it would be. You're talking about being inhabitable.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if this is inhabitable, are you talking about if it's parked beside of a service station that's got a drop for waste and
no,
whatever?
This is just a house you could pull up there and hook up to the other
utilities and whatever.
And you'd have a house.
Okay, I got you. In other words, what you're talking about is a place.
How many square feet was it?
I don't know. It's about equivalent of one of them motor homes you've got. A little longer, maybe.
I got about 230 square feet,
Something like that.
Probably 250 on that one.
What do you think?
I'm gonna say.
Oh man.
I'm gonna say it costs at least a couple $100,000.
What do you think?
I have no idea. If you're talking about it being there's 2 or 3 items here that I don't understand. If it's environmentally sound, that means that it doesn't have to be pulled up and hooked up to water or air or electric or whatever.
It was one of them are very efficient, affordable houses.
You talking about with solar panels and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Solar power.
Holy cow! They ain't no telling then if it was set like that.
Well, it was just short of $500,000 that they spent.
I said 200 to
Gosh.
300,000.
Yeah, it was 400 and something. Nearly 5.
Well, everybody ought to have one of those.
I reckon they ought to.
Lord.
I built one out there that had more square feet in it, $1,200. And I had a telephone.
Okay, I'd like to see a list of all the engineers that were involved and all of the codes and you name it. Everybody got a dime out of it.
So you could farm.
Well, it probably didn't cost, but probably 1% or less of what you're talking about to actually build it. But the rest of it is.
And they didn't even win the competition.
They didn't win.
No.
They didn't spend enough money.
I reckon that's it.
Yeah.
There's a thing that I've been reading about and listening to. One of our biggest enterprises, I guess, in this country has been, is Clayton Homes. And they're building a modular device, and these things are being sent to New York for low-cost housing. And they just plug these things in, like setting them in the way I understand it, they stack them and whatever else. And they was telling about the living space in this thing. And it's designed, the way I understand it, for a 4-member family. And
that really get along.
I don't see how in the world you can be in that little old office I've got. I believe it's half the size of that office.
Yeah.
And you put 4 people in there. I got a feeling somebody's going to be stepping on somebody's toes. They're going
got to really get along with each other.
Yeah, but then what you do, you get you a couple of ounces of pot and a big bag full of Doritos and go in there and fire up, and it's so airtight you don't have to fire it but one joint at a time.
That'll warm.
And everybody
you keep breathing and rebreathing.
And everybody will feel just wonderful.
Well, I reckon this is a pretty good sized project from what I heard at that time.
Right.
Now I don't know where it's went to in the last little bit, but I thought it was interesting that something here. I believe they're built up above Tazewell somewhere in that area. That we were going spreading out into New York
here.
And whatever. Is where they're being built.
Well, I still think those grain storage bins that they used down in Haiti probably was the best answer they come up with.
Yeah. As far as just a place to get out of the elements, there's all sorts of things you can do. You know.
Oh yeah.
These shipping containers, I've seen shipping
Wonder what they
containers
did
used
with
for
all those
everything.
old telephone booths. You know, they
Oh.
could be renovated.
Uh-huh.
Doctor Who got all them.
Uh-huh. But, uh,
Where's Superman change britches now, by the way?
Yeah.
good question.
That's the reason we never see him anymore.
That's what happened to him.
But-
You know.
Back in those days, it really didn't take a whole lot to entertain us, did it? I believe we could sit around and watch the grass grow and be entertained.
Well, probably a lot more wholesome entertainment
Yeah.
than what you see on here now.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I heard another one. The world's a fascinating place once you learn to read. And since my
really
wife
is.
taught me to read a little bit after that third grade graduation, I read where that the athletic department over at UT has declared their meetings closed meetings.
Right. No minutes.
That's right. And the way it reads, the way I read the article, they're not allowed to take minutes, or they don't take minutes either, or if they do, they're not made public. And this is a something along $100 million department with closed meetings and no minutes. Now that's interesting.
What's their justification?
Oh, they said they discussed a lot of things that should not be aired out in public, and all they were doing was just discussing them, and that the individual departments would actually execute on these proposals.
The guy that wrote the article at the bottom of it stated that you can either support it or not support it by buying the tickets to their events, one way or the other, where you support what they're doing.
What got me, now what gets me, I was raised with sports from day one. All of my family was sports minded. In fact, I had a brother that pitched Major League Baseball. I had other brothers that were pretty good at other sports. I had one brother that was so big and strong that they would not let him practice with his own team because they did not have enough to start the game when he got through with them, practicing with them. He was like a bull in a china shop. Every time he hit one, somebody broke something on them. But myself, I played organized sports from the time I was 12 years old. I got 40 years old. I was 40 years old and I quit playing
I
organized
played organized sports. We called it work.
Well, that's what I was just kind of figuring out,
but,
how we turned it into a
no.
sport.
No, I'd get up in the morning, from Saturday morning, I'd milk at least 2 cows. I'd feed
And
the
one in each
chickens.
hand.
I'd feed the chickens, take care of all the livestock, maybe take a herd of cows down to the lower pasture. Whatever needed to be done, from shelling corn, I still got an old corn sheller, whatever needs to be done. But if I worked hard, I could leave the house at 1 o'clock on Saturday and go play a baseball game at 2 o'clock. Okay? And, you know,
And by now, you can't even keep a chicken pen down.
well, no, you know, I've got better in my old age.
Yeah.
Used to, when I got ready to play baseball, especially if I was going to pitch, I'd have to get out there and warm up for a half hour to 45 minutes. Do you realize I can go out and shake hands with the umpire now, and I'm just as warmed up as I'm ever going to get?
Okay. Well, I was trying to think about whenever you was talking about sports. I guess we did do a little bit, but most of the sport was who could hoe out that row of corn the fastest, or who could
Shovel that coal.
Yeah, shovel that coal.
We
Man,
had
shoveling
50
coal.
acres of corn in one field.
Uh-huh.
And all my brothers were in service, and my daddy bought me a riding cultivator, 1 row at a time. Can you imagine how long it took to plow to cultivate a 50-acre field 1 row at a time? It was ready to start back over again time you got to the other side.
Did you have a mule pulling it, or
I had 2 mules.
2
It
mules?
was, yeah.
can you imagine how many miles them mules walked? And
Oh.
you had them mules shoed, didn't you?
No, we didn't have our shoes.
You didn't shoe them?
No, we
Okay.
didn't. We kept their hooves trimmed good, but we
Yeah.
never had to shoe our horses or
Okay.
our mules. We had a real fine, loamy type
Okay.
gray soil.
You didn't have that chert stones and everything?
No, no,
okay.
no. I hardly ever had to get a stone out of their foot.
Uh-huh.
But can you imagine a 50-acre field of corn?
Oh,
I mean,
that's...
and there I was. My brothers were in service in 1941. I was about 7, 8 years old, and they'd take me over there and set me on that riding cultivator. And my daddy
Could have
went to
been
work
worse.
second shift. He went to work second shift, and I was to plow until dark.
Uh-huh.
And then I would unhook my mules. I'd hook Babe up to the sled. I'd hook Nell behind her. I'd get in the sled, and as a young boy, I was so tired, I would go to sleep. And that mule, it was about that field there that Daddy owned was about 2 miles from the house. And that mule would take me home, stay on the right side of the road, go down there across the railroad tracks, go down there and make a left on our road. The only thing she never learned to do, when she got to the house, she would try to go in the stable with that sled behind her. And that's what woke me up when I hit
That mule, old Rivers and Bob.
Yeah. And I'd get out then, I'd wake up when she hit that barn, and I'd unhitch her and push the sled out of the way and put the other mule back in there and feed them and water them good, you know. And then we didn't have any electricity at that time. I'd go up there and study by lantern and lamp and candlelight if I need to study. I usually didn't need to study too much because, you know, even while I was cultivating that corn, I was reading a book or a magazine. And so,
You know, you didn't work. You just rode behind the horse.
that's all I did. The south end of a northbound horse or mule, I reckon I carried two. A lot of times I carried 2 teams over there. He said, "Don't you get those mules and horses too hot?" I said, "What about me?" He said, "You ought to have sense enough not to get too hot." Let me show the folks something here before we get off there.
My uncle, he had a team, and they weren't that friendly.
Hey, Bob. Bob.
What? Okay, I'm coming back. I'm not going nowhere.
Okay.
My uncle's team of mules, they were real energetic, and
Was I burning there?
they would run away.
Huh?
If my uncle's team,
Was I, yeah.
oh, they would run, and I don't know what was doing there, what they was doing that day. They was disking or something. I don't know what it was, but anyhow, the mules run, and they got away from him, and they didn't catch him for about a day and a half or 2 days. They went down through the cedar thicket and wherever else. But anyhow, whenever they caught up them mules, the only thing left of the harness was the collars. They had tore everything else. There was pieces of harness laying everywhere where they went through the trees.
Now, the mules and horses that we had, my older brothers just had absolutely no rapport with them. They couldn't get work out of them. There was always some excuse. The mule did this, the mule did that. Me as a little old boy, I'd take them over there and hook them up to a 2-horse turning plow. That would be a number of what, 20
Bull
plow.
Jim.
Huh?
Is that,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'd learn, you know, that loamy
yeah.
soil, I
Uh-huh.
could just handle it just real
Right.
easy. And when I got to the end of the road, I threw it down and they pulled it right
turned
back
it around.
around. I set it back up and there I went again. But I never had a mule run away with me but one time. And we had one of these sprayers that you spray arsenic or lead with, and it would spray down from the top onto the back of plants, and it had 2 that sprayed up underneath, you know, so it was doing the right side of this road and the left side of that one, then go back and get the other. Well, one of those hoses came off and started squirting that stuff up under the tail of that mule that was pulling it, okay? And she tried to get away from it, and the faster she run, the faster it pumped, you know. And there I was hanging on to it as a little kid and trying to talk to her and calm her down and everything. Finally it run out of water or arsenic or lead, and I finally got her calmed back down. But I had the best luck with those mules, you know, this little old bitty fella. They did whatever one do. Folks, I got some stuff here you might be interested in. That is a box of 223 rifle shells. I've got about 5 boxes of
So if
those.
you need to buy any boxes,
Right. They're full of shells.
get them too.
They're 223 shells, and I've got a good price on them. I'll take $8 a box, and there's 20 cartridges in there. And I've got some real good Wagner shotgun shells. These are 12 gauge, and they're 2210 composition for the number of pellets at them.
What do you get for them Wagners?
For these,
Yeah.
I get, I'm asking $10 a box. They retail for $14 a box.
That's them Wagner, Bob.
Yeah.
That ain't Wagner. That's
Yeah.
Wagner.
Wagner.
Wagner, yeah.
We gotta go, everybody.
Right.
Glad you got to see us. If you need any campaign signs, we got the little pieces of plywood and them our little 1x4s that you can get out there and make your campaign signs and run for city council if you want
Yes,
to.
yes, you can. So
Bye.
call me, 423-201-5917. Yeah,